Hi, and welcome to today's educational webinar, The Industrial Distributor of the Future. I'm Anna Wells, Executive Editor of Industrial Distribution, and I'll be serving as the moderator for today's event. So today we're going to discuss how not all e-commerce is created equal, and that the success of an e-commerce website is completely dependent on the quality of the product content. A product master data management, or MDM, strategy includes centralized, normalized, optimized, and enriched product content that is easy to find, intuitive, and descriptive in order to enable the buyer to quickly make a purchasing decision. We're in an age where Amazon Supply excels at e-commerce, and so we couldn't ask for a better speaker today, Jason Hein. Jason's background in distribution spans over 15 years, and he's held positions with both McMaster-Carr and Amazon. In fact, Jason was responsible for building the vendor base for Amazon.com's industrial business categories. Today, Jason is a principal consultant for Codified, a company on the cutting edge of product content solutions. Codified services and solutions enable distributors and manufacturers to design, deliver, integrate, and sustain high-quality product content. So before we hear from Jason, I'd just like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and archived, and you'll be sent a follow-up email in order to view it on demand if you'd like. In addition, if you'd like to ask Jason a question, you can submit that at any time via the Ask a Question box. You just click Submit. And we'll get to as many of those questions as we can later on in the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this off to Jason Hein. Jason.
Thanks, Anna. Wanted to just a quick welcome to everybody who's attending the call today. We're excited about this topic, obviously, and excited to help companies figure out their best solution to manage product content online. All right, there we go. So a little bit more about Codified. We are a technology-enabled consulting service, and we offer both consulting services and cloud-based solutions to all kinds of companies in the industrial distribution space, not just distributors, but also manufacturers and also some conventional retailers. So today we're going to cover three main topics. We'll do a quick overview of the current changes happening in the industrial distribution market, and we'll take some time to highlight some common mistakes that we've seen distributors make in response to those changes. But the bulk of the conversation today is really going to focus on the foundational work that distributors can do to adapt and stay competitive in the future. And we'll obviously try to save plenty of time at the end for your questions. So we'll jump right in to the current changes in the space. There are four big high-profile topics that you are seeing lots of articles about. These are the titles in a lot of webinars, articles in the trade magazines, and they focus around four main areas. The first is the shift in demographics that's happening at the requisitioner level. There are 80 million baby boomers and 76 million millennials that are currently in the space. And that is explaining why we've seen this rapid shift to e-commerce. When it was just the baby boomers, they were the ones who really built the way that this business happens today. A lot of the relationship-based selling, trust and expertise and background. And when Generation X came on board in the 90s and early 2000s, there just simply weren't enough of them to really make a significant impact in terms of how business was done. But now that the millennials are entering, and there's almost as many of them as there are baby boomers, we're seeing a rapid shift. We've kind of hit that tipping point of e-commerce being a viable method for B2B. The second area that is a big topic of conversation is how our customers have become globalized. And it's made it challenging for distributors who typically are regional in nature to service customers who are increasingly global, whether it's a global company like a GM or a Ford or a Boeing, or a small local customer who happens to be doing work in Dubai, in Alberta, in Indonesia. The customers are going global, and that's creating a need for 24-hour service availability. One way that some companies have addressed this issue is by consolidating. The industrial distribution space has historically been a very fractionalized, diverse range of small companies. But what's happening is distributors are getting bigger now, whether that's through organic growth, acquisitions, or combinations of the two. And that's influencing how manufacturers are getting product information to the end users, because distributors are now, as they get bigger, exerting more control over the product content that they display. Companies like Grainger and Amazon now have very high standards and expect that manufacturers will actually supply much more content for their customers to use on their sites than has been done in the past. And finally, and the reason that we're going to talk a lot about this today, is the entrance of B2C players from other industries into the industrial distribution marketplace. The opportunity of B2B is no longer a secret. And whether it's companies that are online-only sellers like Amazon Supply, who functionally exist as regular distributors, they're inventorying product, they're shipping product from their warehouses to customers, or it's companies that are pure marketplace builders. Companies like Google Shopping, Alibaba has made a lot of noise this year with their entry into the U.S. market. And a third player is the established and experienced B2C brick and mortar companies such as Home Depot, Lowe's. They've all been talking about the opportunity in B2B and looking for ways to get better quickly. Some lower profile changes that are also happening and that aren't getting as much attention are how expectations of end users and requisitioners are changing. Consumers have been shopping online for 15 years now, and they like it. Their preferences are shifting, and their expectations are being set, many of them by these B2C e-commerce experiences that they've become trained to use. There's very low switching costs associated with typing in one website address versus another website address. And customers are now coming to expect intuitive search, accurate product data, and web-enabled tools in the sites they use to discover product. Technology is also innovating at lightning speed and is helping companies make decisions in new ways about how they go to market. Data is now very easy to gather and aggregate and use to make decisions about what you're going to do in terms of selection that you make available to your site, how you market to your customers, and how you evaluate your position in the marketplace vis-a-vis your competitors. Information is becoming much more transparent than it was 15, 20 years ago, because as companies move online, a lot of their policies and best practices, whether it's pricing, inventory levels, shipping and return policies, are now available for your competitors to see and for you to see from your competitors. Innovations that companies come up with on their sites to drive a better customer experience are now sooner to be recognized by your competitors and potentially duplicated. And the result has been it's tightened up the innovation life cycle and forced companies to become smarter and faster about using the data they get from customers to change the way they merchandise and create a customer experience online. The third factor that's a big, interesting one is how many distributors haven't quite taken the plunge yet. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. This isn't something that is only the small mom and pop shops that the stereotypes would say are going to be slow to come to this market. There are large companies doing tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars who have been waiting to see whether this is really going to take off and before they make a decision as to their direction. And that's understandable. That's not a bad thing. Mark Andreessen is a venture capitalist. He's the guy who started Netscape. And he has this wonderful quote, "In tech, being early is the same thing as being wrong." And we really can see that in this space today. You look at the companies in technology that have made a name for themselves. They really built their experience based on what they learned from earlier players. Facebook learned a lot from Friendster and MySpace, and going all the way back to theglobe.com in the peak of the internet bubble. Companies like Google learned a lot from Excite, AltaVista, Yahoo. Many of the successful companies today are built on what they've seen from their competitors. Again, taking advantage of the transparency of information that's come to the space. There also isn't a lot of impact on current sales channels. I talk to many distributors who say, I'm not seeing my customers leave because, so therefore internet and e-commerce isn't really impacting my business. And while it certainly is true that there's not necessarily a clear first mover advantage to going online, it's really no longer early in B2B. Companies like Grainger and McMaster-Carr and now Amazon Supply are coming online more and more each day. The longer companies wait to get involved, the more uncomfortable that waiting can become because more and more of your competitors are getting ahead of where you are today. So, if waiting is no longer an option, what can we do and what are companies trying to do today and where are they perhaps slipping and stumbling a little bit? There's two things that we see the most often. One is it's really tempting to focus on kind of what's always worked in the past. And from a business strategy perspective, again, this is understandable. The business strategy textbooks tell you focus on what differentiates you from your competition. And for many distributors today, the sources of their competitive advantage are in one of three areas. We've got really strong customer relationships, personal relationships with buyers at our clients. We offer technical expertise, and we offer value-added services that these new entrants just can't do yet or won't do yet. But those three areas, while they may be differentiating sources of competitive advantage today, they have risk. Relationship-based sales, for example, are less effective for the younger generation than they were for the Gen X and especially the baby boomers. And that's not to say that younger buyers don't value relationships. The primary problem is that younger workers are much more mobile. They stay with a company on average for about 2 years before moving on to a new opportunity. So the investments that you make in building relationships with people at that level you have to realize returns much more quickly because you don't have the length of time that relationship will be productive. Because they're generally only with that company for 2 years, younger workers typically don't want to wait or can't wait for a salesperson or a sales call. And that's why they prefer researching products on their own. Over 60% of people in the millennial generation use research online prior to buying. Technical knowledge is talking about some of the innovations that we talked about earlier are chipping away at the low-hanging fruit for expertise. Now, again, this isn't to say that true technical expertise isn't going to be valuable. So, for example, if you're talking about an engineered solution, that's sort of like a bespoke tailor working today. There's always going to be a market for that. It's very, very difficult. I've worked for Amazon. I've tried to build solutions, but but a lot of the smaller, more, for lack of a better term, basic technical expertise sources, people are coming up with ways to present that information in an electronic and online manner. Examples would be, so Sandvik Coromant has a number of mobile apps that they can use, that customers can use to optimize feeds and speeds. Material compatibility charts are available on a number of best-in-class industries. And it's just a way of helping these customers who need a fast solution find something that it might not be perfect, but it's good enough for what they need right now. Value-added services, honestly, I think of all of the three, this one might have the longest time horizon, because things like vendor-managed inventory, doing custom packaging and repackaging, these are areas that companies like Amazon and Google are typically less interested in. But again, I can never say that Amazon is not going to get involved in a particular industry. I mean, people who remember Peapod and Webvan from back in the day of the dot-com boom certainly might never have considered that anybody would want to take on grocery delivery. But Amazon has taken that on with Fresh, and Google is now taking that on with their Google Shopping services. So the takeaway from this is never say never. Oops, I hit the wrong. There we go. Sorry about that. So, now that we've covered what not to do, let's take a little time to talk about what the distributor of the future will do to stay effective. First of all, it starts with acknowledging the impact that these demographic changes are going to have in the space, and that they are going to continue to have as this shift increases. Successful distributors are going to take advantage of their second mover status and learn from what successful B2C sites have done and build from that. Use your opponent's strength against them to come up with your own best-in-class solution. So let's talk about why customers buy from B2C websites. What are the things that they are doing that we can learn from? There's 3 areas that B2C websites that are successful, again, really shine. The first is in usability. Usability is the key to product discovery, and most current customers have been trained in how to search for product by companies like Google and Amazon. When you think about going to a site, the process that you use to discover product, to put together what keywords you use, are influenced by how you've been trained to do that on Google and Amazon. Since Google users are already trained on how to do that, it's easier now to design your own site to take advantage of that existing best practices and focus your investment on true innovations. It includes operational excellence as well. So even though Amazon is successful because they have a good design, they've also presented themselves and created themselves as a single source for everything that they need by offering a wide and deep product selection and logistical support, such as drop shipping, virtual warehouses, free shipping. They make it very easy to do business with them. The second factor is in the product content itself. If you can think of usability as the process of product discovery, content is where you drive that confidence in the customer that the product they have discovered is the right product for them. This includes attribute data, it includes images and copy, and it also includes, for the B2C sites that are really successful, what we call educational content. This is content that exists not only at the SKU level, but also is presented to the customer as they are going through the discovery process. So if there are technical products, items like buying guides, selection tools, use of images to show pictures of different features, application and compatibility charts, can be very helpful when a customer is at a decision point. Well, which size do I need? Which style do I need? Which do I want a spiral flute tap? Do I want a spiral point tap? Do I want a hand tap? The ability to present customers with informative information about the features and benefits associated with each of those options gives them confidence to make that next choice and take that next step towards the product that they're eventually going to buy. And the third factor is technology. The successful B2C companies have taken advantage of this high usability that they've built and the strong content that they've loaded against it to start to learn about customer behavior using analytical tools. By creating a B2C website that is an authoritative source for information, that drives repeat business from their customers. Customers, instead of going to Google to shop for product, now go straight to the high-quality B2C site because it's earned the trust of the user. And the more times those customers return to buy more product, the more that B2C company learns about their preferences, learns about what they're buying, both in terms of what they actually buy and shop for, but also where they fail. They can learn about what search queries are they using that then they abandon the site. Maybe that tells them something about products that they're lacking. It kind of becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy where the more customers they attract to a site, the more they learn about what those customers want, and the better job they're able to do at targeting their recommendations and email marketing to read the tea leaves about customer preferences. So how do we match this? How does the distributor of the future match this experience? Well, let's talk about usability first. The three tools that are most important when you're creating a high usability site on your site are to make sure that the website navigation is well organized. There's a concept called taxonomy. Some people are familiar with it, some people aren't. But it's fundamentally a tool for how your selection is organized online. It starts at a very high level, product categories such as safety, abrasives, material handling. And with each selection, the customer is presented with a more narrowly scoped, narrowly defined set of options until they get to what they're looking for. An analogy is when you walk into a department store. Let's say I'm going to shop for a dress shirt at Nordstrom's. I walk in the door of the store, and the signs that I see are pointing me to departments. They're pointing me to the men's department, the women's department, the home department, the electronics department. Well, I know I'm looking for a men's dress shirt, so I know to go to the men's department. I go up to the third floor, because that's where the men's department invariably is. And I have to look around now, and I have to find the sign for shirts. And I see a sign for pants. I see a sign for shoes. I see a sign for athletic wear. Here we go. Here's the shirts department. I go to that part of the floor. And now I'm looking at the different racks. How is each rack indicated and labeled until I find the one that says dress shirts? In 3 steps, I've gone from everything in the entire department store to one rack of products that contains what I'm looking for. A taxonomy does that same fundamental thing for any kind of product in an online environment. It can be challenging to create and maintain this type of work. That's why it's typically most effective if a taxonomy is maintained by dedicated employees. And that's not necessarily because the taxonomy is going to change a lot, but oftentimes because there's dynamics happening within the selection that's available that needs to be classified, having one person who can objectively look at that product as somebody who is not a product expert helps to make the taxonomy easy to use by people who, again, aren't experts. And one of the things that they can do to do that is using clear, concrete names based on the data that you've learned from your customers' behaviors. So using your customer traffic data, if you're trying to decide whether you should call one level of your taxonomy wastebaskets or trash cans, well, that might really depend on what your customers call that. And that might be influenced by geographic location, what language your customers are speaking, and just personal preferences for your particular part of the country. This is part of the reason that effective B2C sellers create custom taxonomies for their experience and don't try to leverage something like UNSPSC that is kind of a universal standard taxonomy. It doesn't necessarily reflect the needs and preferences of their customers. Faceted search is another area, that's another tool that's very useful for customers. And this lets customers filter through thousands of similar products using key differentiating attributes. So an example would be for screws. Machine screws are always a very, very popular product in industrial distributors. There's so many different kinds of shapes and sizes and designs of machine screws. It can be hard to look through. If I'm offering 25,000 SKUs of machine screws, if I'm a customer shopping that, I don't want to click through page after page of search results until I get what I'm looking for. Faceted search lets the customer narrow that search down. So, you know what? I want a 1/4" 20 thread size. I want it to be 304 stainless steel. I want it to be a pan head screw. I want it to be a Torx dry style. I can make 4 selections in my faceted search functionality and go from 25,000 screws to 4 or 5. That's much easier for me as a customer to differentiate between, and I'm much more likely to pick the solution that's right for me. In B2B, because a lot of our products are technically sophisticated, successful companies can take advantage of, again, employing educational content at during the faceted search. Sometimes products are hard to explain with words alone. Again, think about head styles for screws. the difference between a Philister head, a cheese head, a pan head, a flat head. If you're an expert in those products, we all know what those mean and what they look like. But if somebody's new to the space, new to the industry, having a picture next to the choice is very helpful. Or even having a few lines of copy that describe, the advantage of a flathead screw is it lies flush to the surface after installation, eliminating any objects or possibility of snagging. Customers love this type of functionality, and they absolutely take advantage of it. And again, it's about eliminating friction between your homepage and the product itself. Finally, site search on your site. This is when customers get to your site, how does your site respond to the queries that they're putting together? Lots of search engines are actually very, very good at delivering results for the right keywords. However, a lot of customers, even though they've been trained by Amazon and Google, still perform searches that are, quote, wrong. They might misspell an item. They might use industry trade terms or jargon. They might use abbreviations. They might have some variation in terms of the size query. So screws, again, is a great example. When you think about thread sizes and all the different ways that those can be formatted in a search query, it can create some pretty challenging queries for your search engine manager to have to deal with. So this is why product content can be very useful in tuning your search engine to catch those synonyms, to know that socket head cap screws and SHCS are the same thing and should return the same results. Some companies are also very good at actually interpreting these queries and redirecting customers to a more appropriate category page. So if a company is searching for earplugs, some companies choose to actually redirect that to a somewhat higher level page for hearing protection that provides opportunities to cross-sell and upsell. Content itself, phase 2. Once the product discovery process has gotten your customer to where they want to go, you're showing them a product, we now have to actually convince them that this product that they've discovered is the one that they're looking for. This is where product content is key. Product data is the tool that provides that fills the gap between the online and shopping in brick and mortar stores. Again, think about when you go into a store and you're shopping. To evaluate a product when you are in person, you pick it up off the shelf. You're turning it left. You want to view it from every angle. You want to read the label. You're looking at the product. You're able to have a sensory experience with this product to confirm that it's the right product for you. But with an online buyer, they don't have that sensory capability, so they have to rely on product attribute data to bridge this gap. And that means they need it to be clear and consistent across all the SKUs in your selection. Customers online want multiple assurance points that, yep, this screw that I think I found, yep, the size matches, the length matches, the head type matches, the drive type matches, the finish matches, the pack quantity matches. The more of those points we're able to confirm by providing the data that the customers are looking for, the more confident they're going to be about buying the product on the site. Images also are very important. Product that matches all of the attributes, but they're showing a product that is exactly a completely different image. I actually had this happen to me at Amazon. An image had been loaded to that SKU by one of our third-party sellers that was of a completely different product. It was a women's apparel, like a shirt or a blouse. Needless to say, sales on that product, even though all of the attribute data was there, because we were showing a picture that was something completely different, it hurt the confidence of the customers until we fixed and corrected that image. It's more than just having an image, though, that makes for a great customer experience. You want that image to be high resolution. Let the customer zoom in and see the detail of what they're going to buy. Sometimes you'll actually find customers have a product in their hand that they're trying to match, and they're going to rotate it in all these different angles. So the more angles of product and the more complementary images you can provide at the SKU level, the more confidence you're going to instill in that customer to buy the product. Product copy is another really valuable tool. It's particularly valuable when it is custom written. So even though manufacturers oftentimes will have product descriptions that they can provide to the distributor of the future, syndicated copy like that does have an impact on search rankings when evaluated by Google and Bing. Search engines like content that is unique and fresh. And if the product copy on your site is the same as the product copy on all of your competitors' sites, it starts to kind of, become familiar. It's not unique. It's not bringing insight into the buying experience. And so it might work for consumers, but it does have a slightly negative impact on discoverability in free search. Make sure that you're creating product copy in terms of titles and descriptions that aren't too full of abbreviations and industry jargon. Again, keeping in mind you're trying to present your customers with information without assuming that that they know everything that you know about the product. And finally, rich media. Products, assets like videos, CAD drawings, images, user manuals, technical data sheets, and MSDSs are fantastic tools. They help the distributor of the future turn their site into the single source of truth. It's actually really interesting how many customers come to these B2C sites just to get information about product without even necessarily buying it there, because they've done a good job aggregating all of these available pieces of information. It's also really interesting because even this is the one exception to syndicated content. Manufacturers have these assets available oftentimes, but these types of assets are typically not indexed by the search, so they create a great experience online without necessarily hurting your visibility. And lastly is matching the B2C experience on technology. This is where you're going to start to learn about what your customers are doing and measure your responses to that new information using data. It starts with investing in a PIM, some sort of product information management system. Even though we talked earlier about how sometimes investing in a PIM, it can be a mistake, it's only when that PIM system is not populated with good, clean attribute data. If you have a PIM system that has every single piece of content about the product that you select, it then can drive, first of all, it makes managing your selection much easier because you only have to update product data once in one system as opposed to updating it in your catalog and then going to your ERP system and then going to your inventory system to make the same change 3 different times. A PIM system can simply push it out across all of your systems. By linking the PIM to your ERP and CRM tools, you can start to draw correlations between the products that are being sold, the customers who are buying those products, and the aspects of those products to infer trends. So if you find that a lot of your customers in the food service industry are buying a particular type of bearing, that provides you and your salespeople with useful information for when they go to make sales calls to new food service industries in your area. You're really leveraging the strength of the linkages between your customers and your product data to better understand your customer preferences and use that information to think strategically about your product selection, cross-selling and upselling opportunities, email targeting, inventory, and even new customer acquisition. The third point is perhaps the most important, and that is that investing in technology is never done. This feedback loop that we talked about between customer and product information will perpetually inform the choices that the distributor of the future makes about the design of their website and the functionality that they offer. They will observe trends and behaviors in their customers on their site. They will come up with a new design idea to take advantage of this behavior. They will test this new design by showing the new functionality to some customers and not others, what's called A/B testing. And then if the performance data has a significant impact on key performance indicators, that's the time that the customers, excuse me, that the distributor of the future will then launch the site. No functionality is going to be launched based on a whim or an idea. It's all going to be launched on data. And finally, every 2 to 3 years, it's best practices to actually go through and refresh your site. To take a strategic look at, are we measuring the right metrics? Are we setting the right goals for e-commerce? Are we benchmarking appropriately, keeping in mind that competition can come at any time from any place in this environment? And you want to be ready to adapt your website to those changes. And finally, do we have the content that we need to go to market in the way that we want? As these marketplace sellers become a bigger factor, Alibaba did not become the most successful company online because they had a product that didn't work. At some point in the future, the distributor of the future may decide that they want to participate in an e-marketplace designed for B2B suppliers offered by Alibaba or Google, or a comparable, eBay might decide to get into this business. And their ability to quickly adapt their product content to fit the requirements of those different marketplaces. Again, looking at, these different marketplaces are going to have their own unique product data templates required to load selection into that marketplace. And you want to make sure that every product attribute, every piece of content that those marketplaces are looking for is already available in your system. So now that we've addressed the 3 big keys to success for a B2C site, we get a bonus. There's a bonus benefit to having a really comprehensive product content e-commerce strategy. It is oftentimes just as useful for your existing sales organization and your offline channels. Because the millennial generation tends to be somewhat sales averse, some companies are actually transforming their sales organizations to more of a relationship management role, and thinking broadly about how outside sales influences and interacts with customers beyond an in-person site visit. And we can use the technology that we've made these investments to drive product content to explore options like telepresence. Can our relationship management organization engage with customers virtually possibly through video conferencing directly one-on-one with customers that are geographically hard to reach, again, touching base on addressing the global customer challenge, or possibly even on their own site, engaging in a webinar like what we're doing today. Hey, let's talk about new developments in the safety industry. Hey, let's talk about new product launches coming from our key vendor, and offering to a broad range of customers the ability to interact and see the expertise that your salespeople bring to the relationship. The other benefit about strong product content, specifically when it comes to educational content, is it helps to train and level up inside salespeople faster. Generational turnover is a problem that does not apply only to the customers. As the millennial generation enters in and becomes part of the sales organization, they too will move on to other roles quickly, and having strong educational content will help them gain expertise and help you realize the benefits of that training faster. The other aspect is, with the improved understanding of customer preferences and desires that comes from the technology aspect, it helps to equip your salespeople with a much more complete picture of their customers' needs and wants before they have an interaction. So they're able to look at, in great detail, what is this customer buying? They're able to look at how does what this customer buys in the industry that they are in compare to other customers in this line of business, and what they happen to be buying from my selection. Again, as part of the shift from sales to relationship management, this lets your outside salespeople become almost more of a best practice consultant as opposed to a pure sales role. By taking the data that you've been able to aggregate across all of your customers and drawing and inferring trends and best practices that you can bring to an individual customer who may or may not be aware of that. And the third aspect, and this is what companies are seeing today in a lot of respects, is you can actually, if you've got a great website that's useful and clear and provides knowledge and expertise and has earned the trust of customers, you can actually let the website take care of sales for those kind of longer tail customers, maybe the ones that are smaller, maybe the ones that are startups, maybe the ones that aren't quite doing enough business to justify having a full sales call, but you're still providing an impression of your brand and your customer service in a way that is the way they want to shop until they get to the point where they're big enough to deserve a little bit more attention. Plus, you're able to do things like target emails, target on-site promotions based on that customer at a very low cost. So in conclusion, high-quality product content is a foundational asset for companies to create a customer-centric e-commerce experience. When content is combined with technology to do analysis and customer understanding, that product content increases traffic, drives conversion, and because of that, it increases your revenue both online and off. And the industrial distributor of the future can successfully compete with both B2C and B2B competition if they take this kind of content-first approach. So, all right, I was able to get through that, and we've got almost 20 minutes for questions and discussion.
Great. Thanks so much, Jason. I think that you have given us quite a bit to think about, and that's evidenced by the number of questions that we have coming in from the audience. But before we get to those, I was hoping to chat with you for a few minutes on some of the topics that I really consider to be top of mind for the industrial distributors that we reach with ID Magazine. First of all, and this is, big news coming out of recent weeks, but Google obviously shutting down its Shopping for Suppliers pilot program. What is your opinion on this and maybe what it means for the B2B sector and Google's role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was just as surprised as everybody else by Google shutting down Google Shopping for Suppliers, primarily because the opportunity is still there. And after thinking about it for a few days, I've kind of come to an understanding point that I think makes sense, and that is that the Google Shopping for Suppliers site is an attempt to create an e-marketplace somewhat similar to what Alibaba is doing. They are inventorying products, but they're trying to be a facilitator of transactions between somebody who needs a service and somebody who desires a service. And the Google Shopping for Suppliers was a separate function, separate from Google's regular Google Shopping experience that was focused on the B2B space. The challenge that I think that they faced, because it's a challenge that I faced in other companies that I've worked for, is the way that customers search for product on Google and the way that companies search for product in a conventional B2B site are different. Google Shopping for Suppliers did not offer some of the things that we've talked about in the conversation today in terms of driving a great discoverability and usability experience. What you could do was you could enter in a search query. And so people who search for this industrial types of product oftentimes would put in attribute values. They weren't just searching for screws. They were searching for a 1/4 inch 20 by 1 inch 316 SS, SHCS, BO for a black oxide coating. They're loading these queries with a lot of information that is not clear to Google's algorithms whether or not this is actually the subject being searched for or a modifier. And so when you looked at the results on Google Shopping for Suppliers would serve up, there was sometimes quite a bit of noise. So I think what Google was smart to do is to recognize that they still needed some work to do on their algorithms and their discoverability and usability experience. So they pulled it down. They've encouraged people to move to the Google Shopping experience as an interim solution. But I don't believe that this is an indicator that Google is going to get out of this space, primarily for two reasons. One is the sheer size of the opportunity in B2B. Unlike the way that Google shut down their Google Reader tool a few months ago to great dismay of their users, but Google Reader was never going to be a revenue generator. Google Shopping for Suppliers had the potential to be a real revenue generator. And the best evidence for that is the impact that Alibaba is having in China. And Alibaba is now coming into the U.S., and I don't believe that Google is going to stay out of this business for very long. I think they're going to kind of hunker down. They're going to figure out a way to improve their discoverability, and they're going to come back probably integrated with their standard Google Shopping system instead of building out something different.
So we haven't seen the last with Google. I kind of had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah, I think that they're too smart to walk away from an opportunity like this.
So another question that I had, and this comes up a lot, I think, with maybe smaller distributors that just feel like they're so far behind the eight ball. When you look at the relative sophistication of some of the e-commerce functionality of distributors like Grainger, like Amazon Supply, like MSC, do you think there's ever a situation where it's too late for a company to be starting from scratch?
I don't. I'll be honest. I think this is actually a great time to be getting into the space because there are so many great examples that you can start with. And actually, there are certain advantages to starting right now because there are organizations and tools that exist to help people who are new to the e-commerce space for B2B bridge that gap. Companies like Grainger, companies like MSC, one of the challenges that they really faced was it took them significant resources to get their product content to where it is, where it creates this strong experience. Well, those are all kind of best practices today. And there are organizations, whether it's a consulting company like Codify that specializes in doing that kind of work, or software tools that can help make incremental progress towards that effort. It really is a great time to make the move into B2B online because there's so many great ideas that just haven't been invented yet. And with the right set of software developers and the right set of partners, you can make things happen. It was one of the most fun things about working at Amazon was seeing how quickly ideas could be made real. And that is, I think, the culture that is coming to the B2B space in e-commerce. There's lots of opportunities. Yeah, it's really great.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more question for me, and then we'll get to the audience questions. We have quite a few coming in. And just so you guys are aware, if we don't get to your questions, I think we'll see if we can have Jason maybe follow up with you guys after the event one-on-one and try to answer those questions for you. So considering that we have a handful of manufacturing companies in the audience, can you clarify a little bit some of the key points that you have mentioned, how they affect manufacturers specifically and maybe their ability to manage product content?
Absolutely. I think manufacturers have a real challenge in this space, which is this transition, as we talked about briefly, about how the big distributors online are starting to leverage their strength and presence in the space to impose restrictions and constraints and requirements on the product information that manufacturers load. I'm highly confident that there are at least one or two manufacturers that I've worked with at Amazon who worked with me to get some of their product data loaded to meet Amazon standards and who are very familiar with how that can be a challenge. And it's one thing if it's one or two or three companies that are imposing these requirements. It becomes somewhat more challenging if every single distributor that you're working with has their own set of requirements and their own set of needs. So this is why having a very flexible and adaptable product information management system as a manufacturer that's populated, again, with high-quality product content will be key to managing that and making it easy to do business with the channels you want to do business with in the future over time.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jason. Let's take a few audience questions. There's a lot of interest about Amazon, which I had figured, but one of the questions that came in from Frank is really asking how Amazon Supply has really become this 800-pound gorilla when it actually doesn't even provide the same personal customer service that a smaller distributor can provide. Is that something that you can comment on, maybe why that's the case, or go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the success that Amazon is seeing, and again, this is kind of my opinion, based on my time with Amazon and what I saw from their customers. It really does tie into that demographic change that we're seeing in the transition from the baby boomers to the Gen X and the Gen Y. Each successive generation is actually quite satisfied with a good enough solution. So even though there are smaller distributors that might be able to provide kind of they'll take you by the hand and walk you through the selection to the product that is absolutely perfect. If the buyer at this company, the 22-year-old who's just got hired out of Texas A&M as a buyer for the company, and they're just going online to find a place to buy cap screws because they've got a requisition. The other part of it that you have to combat is that 22-year-old purchasing assistant has already been buying everything that they've ever needed from Amazon since they were 7 years old. So there's this history that new requisitioners are bringing into their now business purchasing preferences. And so it's important to make sure that the experiences that you want to build as that smaller distributor are comparable to or perhaps better than what Amazon can provide. Because this is just, I don't know that it's good or bad, it's just kind of the way the millennials really want to shop.
Sure. So, Jason, you had mentioned the term long-tail customer earlier in the presentation. So Jake in the audience is asking you to maybe clarify that definition once again, and maybe you could reiterate your points on how the web might be a good way of addressing the needs of those customers.
Right. So a long-tail customer is, it's a concept that talks about how for most distributors, there's a handful of customers that provide, probably 50% of your business. And then there's like the next 20% or so that probably provides 80% of your business. And then what you have is a lot of these kind of small customers. Maybe it's a small machine shop, maybe it's a little one-employee engineering firm that they might come and buy like one or two things a week. Maybe they're spending, they're maybe spending $500 a month with you. The challenge with those types of customers when you talk to sales managers is it's very hard to grow that business through a conventional outside sales relationship because there are costs associated with sending the salesperson out, both in terms of the cost of actually sending the salesperson, but also the opportunity cost of what sales aren't you getting because you're choosing to send the salesperson to this small customer as opposed to a larger customer with more potential. The advantage that the website offers is it's a way for you to service those long-tail customers in a way that is very low cost while still presenting them and helping them gain an understanding of what are the things that you do. They're forming a brand preference in their mind by seeing the site experience that you offer, how helpful you are in helping them find products, And that really demonstrates that the expertise that you have in helping them find products online is going to be even better when they transition up to doing enough business to actually start to take advantage of the conventional sales model. So that's really the point of that slide, is that the website lets you serve thousands, tens of thousands of customers that ordinarily your sales org might never get to.
Mm-hmm. Sure, makes sense. Okay, this question is from Bill. He's asking, do you feel that non-engineering type distributors are just going to fade away over the next 10 years?
Well, 10 years is an awfully long time. I think the key is going to be how well the distributor of the future helps customers who don't necessarily know what they're looking for find the right solution for them in a way that's really fast and easy to repeat. I think that what's going to end up happening is the consolidation is going to continue to happen, and what's going to get hurt is the biggest impact is going to be in the middle, which is actually similar to kind of what happened in the tailored clothing business over the past 100 years, where, you know, companies that made lots of clothes, lots of suits off the rack kind of became very, very popular, and the true bespoke tailor, who absolutely provides a service that's really valuable, is going to find that there's less work because, and I hate to say this, but because customers they prefer to get an answer that's good enough faster than an answer that is perfect 2 weeks later. So I think the real key is going to be how well the smaller non-engineering distributors adapt to kind of the realities of the way customers are looking to buy product. Some of those companies, like in any business, some of them are going to find a way to bridge that gap, and they're going to build that capacity, and they're going to demonstrate excellence in the new role, in the new world, and they're going to be successful.
Okay. So I'm not sure how much you can divulge about your time with Amazon. I have a question that I'm going to ask it anyway, and then you can just tell me no.
Sure.
But
yeah.
When you were starting Amazon's industrial site, can you talk about any of the major challenges or problems you encountered when you were doing that?
Let's see. I'm trying to see what I can. I think Amazon, we faced a lot of the same kinds of problems that distributors who are trying to get into this space today are trying to do. You know, managing content is a challenge that every single organization has. How do you get good content? How do you get content that is unique? How do you build processes to, you know, get an image for every single SKU that you're showing? How do you create standards for how product is going to be displayed in images and attributes that can scale to the point of Amazon? I mean, these were actually very, very similar to the kinds of problems that we've talked about in the discussion today. And at the time I was with Amazon, I thought I had to do it all myself. And that, I think, is the biggest takeaway. I mean, if I could go back, knowing what I know today about, you know, the tools and the tricks and the people who are out there who could help accelerate some of this, I definitely might have taken a different path, and it could have gone it could have gone much more quickly and much less painfully for me at the time.
Well, I think that's a great place to kind of wrap up. We're just about out of time here, so I just want to reiterate, we have a lot of questions we didn't get to. Sorry that we ran out of time, so we'll pass the list along to Jason and the folks at Codified, and hopefully someone can get back to you individually with answers to those questions. But I just want to thank Jason again for such a great presentation, and the audience as well for your attention and for joining us today. The webcast will be sent out to you via email on demand, so you can view it again, you can share it, and we'll be hosting it on our website, inddist.com, as well for the next 6 months. So you can look for it there as well. Thanks, folks, very much, and have a great afternoon.